All right, it is 2 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm very pleased to introduce our next speaker. It's Esther French from one of my Kentucky Community and Technical Colleges system uh, sister colleges. She's from South Central Kentucky and Technical College. She's going to be talking to us about KYVL, how to do a research revamp. And I'm excited about this because I think it could be useful for me. So take it away.
Well, afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me all right? All right, great. This afternoon, I'm going to be talking to you about this project that we're doing with the KYVL Affiliate Work Group and kind of giving you some heads up about that and letting you participate and give us some feedback about that as well. At SkyCTC, I am the instruction librarian and liaison to, I don't know, every subject area. Just about. So, except maybe for history. That's where I am now. So, very busy over here. But one of the things I do is I'm involved with the KYVL Invalid Work Group. So, we'll take a look at all the great stuff that they're doing with this project here. So what we're going to talk about today is how the work group got involved, what the current how to do research for middle grades in high school, what it looks like right now. You may have been in it, you may have not. So we'll take a look at that and talk about those decisions that we made and why we decided to kind of do a revamp, basically. Our planning process, our redesign process, not that it was very organized, but we did our best on that. And so I'll talk about kind of the methods and materials and some tools that we used. We will take a look at the revamped version that is not live yet, but it's live, but it's kind of a private link. So we'll take a look at that, and we will also discuss our next steps for the project. So you'll have a chance to give some feedback on it and to ask questions at the end. So I'm going to go over here and click my little slide here so I can see what I write. So the KYVL Infolit Work Group charge is to elevate information literacy in the Commonwealth by leveraging those KYVL resources and the expertise of our member libraries. So basically, whatever we do, we're trying to promote information literacy, throughout the state, throughout those all multiple age groups, K through post-secondary. And so that's a big charge, basically. But one of the tasks that we did was to join Enid. Enid is our liaison, KYVL liaison, and she, of course, is only one person with all the stuff that she has to do with the KYVL tools and those information literacy tools. So she uses us as a work group and as a resource to help her with some of the things that come up that she's taking a look at. So she thought, well, this tool hasn't really been revamped. I need to work on it a little bit. So drew us into that. And so members of the Infolit work group that kind of responded and said, we can jump on board for this project because, we have experience with this age group or whatnot, are listed. So I wanted to give them credit. Carla Redden and of course, Enid and Jamie Collins, public library, jumping in there. And she had done some projects with Stephanie on meta literacy, and they presented at a conference, and that's how we got connected. And then Aaron Weaver came in also as well with some of the input. So I just want to make sure that you all know that the work that was done that I'm going to present today is being done by all those folks. Don't want to leave them out for sure. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that current how to do research for middle and high school students. There is a QR code there that you can jump into if you want to take a look at the live version of that for yourself. That is the current version that is up. There's just a little screenshot there of what it looks like on their page. So it's got that familiar sort of LibGuide setup, basically, with the side navigation, the tabs on the side, and basically breaks it down into several different categories or sections of, say, like a tutorial style. So I'm going to pull this over here so that you can kind of take a look at, if you're not looking at the live version, you can see what we're doing here. So again, these tabs on the side, and then it does have some, like, what we will cover, kind of giving the person who's using it, or the student who's using it, a heads up on, okay, what is this about? And then going into each of the sort of regular information literacy sections. So this is nothing, this is very basic, you're not basic in a bad way, but just simple. And it's a lot of text, and then you have your links out to some of the resources that Enid has already created, and some other suggested resources. So what we started noticing when we were taking a look at this initially was that even though this is for middle and high school students, the content was a lot of times coming from, say, like university content, great stuff, right? Great stuff, but not necessarily on the level of the middle grades student. And we thought, well, okay. And so just kind of looking through here, you can kind of look through here, some great stuff again, probably some stuff that we're going to reuse later, but linking out to items, and nothing bad about that. It's just that, again, not very kind of tuned to those middle grades. So the group kind of said, okay, it looks like maybe we need to think about actually just basically doing a redesign that focuses on middle grades specifically. And then once we come up with that middle grades version, let's say, then we can kind of possibly move down into those other grade levels that are younger, and then move up into the secondary age group, and then the post-secondary age group. So using that kind of saying, okay, we're going to start with the middle grades, or we're going to redesign, and we're going to kind of look at and establish some criteria for that. So we wanted to not make it too complicated, because it's a small group, and it's volunteers, so we're trying to get as much done as we can, and all of us are very passionate about this, so that helps a lot when you are. But here is our kind of redesign plan that we came up with. So we decided on our age ranges, which actually our crosswalk for the InfoLit KYVL InfoLit work group had already worked extensively on sort of the age ranges and how those connect with information literacy. So we were very comfortable with, okay, this is what this looks like in, say, a primary level. This is what it looks like in, middle grades. This is what it looks like in secondary, and then post-secondary. So that we felt pretty comfortable with sort of those age groups again. But then we had to kind of think about things like, would we keep the LibGuide format? Would we keep the side navigation? Would we keep those sections kind of the way they are? And then things like, what are our criteria going to be for working with this middle grades age group, right? And I think that we came up with some good points to kind of guide us, basically, as we revamped the content and maybe a little bit of the structure as well. we wanted to make sure that we were staying with like a natural language. So the K through 12 folks that were in the group were very helpful with helping us not to get too post-secondary, right? Which we had already kind of landed there with the current page. But using more natural language, trying to stay away from to it as much as we could, and limiting our content. As you can see, there was a lot of text, so maybe limiting the text a little bit, focusing on essential information. And it's very hard. It's very hard because you feel like, oh, I'm leaving this out, or oh, they need to know this too, or so um it can go, it goes back and forth, it goes back and forth. So we would put something in, and then we'd say, oh, you know what, that's great, but we got to cut it out, or maybe we'll save that for later, or maybe somebody will say, we need something else in there and we can stick it back in. So we really try to keep ourselves focused on the essentials, being consistent with our language. So if we use a term, say like in section 1, we're going to use the same term for that thing in the next section, even down to like the way that we kind of phrased it, just repeating those phrases so that they kind of get into your mind as you're reading through. And then one of the biggest things was making sure that we were using, if we used any videos, that they were short videos. Now, and trying to use vendor videos, right? The vendors have already created them. Here's the intro to whatever database. Here's how to do a basic search, but it's like 15 minutes long. And you're like, what is this? So shortening videos, using shorter videos. There were a few things where we felt like we needed to maybe create our own video, which I will show you in a little bit, that Enid ended up doing, using a tool that she was trying out for some other tutorials. So hey, let's pull that in, because you don't want to, as we've talked about today, we don't want to have things that Enid is having to constantly update, or have so many things that it's just too much on the page. So again, trying to focus, what is it that we really want them to learn from this one thing they're looking at, even if they even look at it, you know what I'm saying? Because we can put this thing out there and they won't use it at all, but we try. So the one of the other pieces that we really had to kind of figure out was what resources we were going to be focusing on. Like if you say, well, I think you should go and use this resource or that or the other, obviously we're going to focus on KYVL resources that are available. Are we going to pull in any other websites? What websites would they be? Are we going to pull any other tools? What would they be? What do we want to sort of endorse, I guess, by putting it on the site? So we found the InfoLit work group did a project with Enid where we helped her at STLP. Has anybody gone to STLP? It is this huge kind of mega event in Lexington with school age and some high school students, where they compete in these different categories, and one of the categories is digital citizenship. So we had already prepped some activities to go and help her at this event. And the students come in and they explore, and they sort of with these hands-on activities. So we had already created basically these sort of 1 minute to 2 minute hands-on activities that somebody could just walk up. We'd say, well, okay, use this database or something. So because we had done that with a specific databases for each age group, we were like, well, we already know what database we used. So let's limit to those. And so that's what we did. So if in a few minutes, we'll take a look at the new version and you'll see the one that we use for middle grades. So the last piece was something that Jamie Collins and Stephanie Keeling had done a lot of work with, was the meta literacy piece. And so what we try to do was incorporate those sort of thinking about thinking, or thinking about the process, or what are you doing, or maybe what's your next step, or here's some questions to consider, incorporating that into the design.
Esther,
Oh,
before
yeah,
you move on, we do have a question in the chat. Ryan
okay.
wants to know, did you have a target length for videos that you were shortening?
Yeah, I mean, my target, I think I've gone to like multiple trainings where it's like, 2.5 minutes would be your max, and I tend to want to do about 2 minutes. Yeah. So so if you have to chunk your content, like I make a shorter video, or again, just focus on the one skill that you want them to know. Don't show them every database you know feature or whatever. What is the one thing you want them to know in this spot? Well, it could be the citations, or what citation tool, or whatever. So you're going to really just focus in on that. So sometimes we have to make our own, because the vendors tend to want to include all the features, in their videos. Um, any other questions before we dive into?
There's not any more in the chat, but Tia is a middle school librarian. She's very excited.
Okay,
So
there is a form at the end that you will be able to show us, to ask us about. So
that's all though.
yeah. So what we did is we already have a Google Drive that the work groups, since we're multiple institutions, not all of us have, say, like Office or whatever it is. So we use Google Drive, and we've used it for years. All the work that previous folks have done with the InfoLit work group, it's all been in the Google Drive. So what we did was we basically, I've given you a link to the drive so you can kind of get in there if you want to, and you can see the content that we put. We basically decided to, you know, put our content on something that we could easily edit, we could share, we could get in and rummage around and be pretty messy with. And so we created a guidelines document, and made sure that we were including standards, um, for, especially from Castle, for those different skills and different steps that we were doing. And we had already done a lot of work with that, so that was easy enough to kind of pull in for our group. And so wanted to make sure that was part of the tool. But this was kind of our working space, and it was real messy for a while. What we discovered in sort of putting content into these different sections, we discovered a couple of things. We discovered that we had way too much text. We went back to our criteria, right? Okay, we're going to keep natural language. It's hard. So we really kind of pushed each other to do that. And I would love it when we get everything all done, and then Stephanie would come in and she'd be like, no. Because she's like, no, that's not gonna work. So it was great. It was fun to do that. But y'all can get into that drive and see those documents with that link, with that QR code there, if you want to. If you want to see our messy method there. And then in the next phase of our implementation of the redesign, we created basically my institution has an account with LibGuides, or LibApps. So I just created a little sandbox, and kind of took the content from the drive, from those Google documents, and transferred it over to the side navigation, the layout. And what my goal was just to kind of get those placeholders. Okay. and then went back to the work group and to the smaller group and said, hey, this is what it's going to kind of look like. You see how the flow is going to be. Here's what our header is going to be. What language should we use for the headers? Things like that. So being consistent and basically after we got to a point where we felt comfortable with that version of it, then I was able to just say, hey, Enid, copy this guide to the KYVL guide. So that's what we did. So you can kind of still see, that's a private link out there. You can still see kind of the middle version going from the Google Docs to the draft libguide out there if you want to use that code to do that. So one thing that we and then Enid had to give us access to the KYVL guide. She had to make us the folks. I can't remember exactly who was editing. I think it might have been Carla Redden and I were in there doing some of the editing and plugging in initially. And so she had to give us admin access basically to get in there and do that with it. Now that's trust, giving people admin access to your guide. So one of the things that we did was to create some icons. Basically, these are out of Canva, but to sort of represent using those KYVL colors that, if you go to the KYVL page, they have certain colors. So I just grabbed the color scheme basically and made sure that the icons that I pulled were just simple enough. Now these could change, but they're just representative at this point. If they decide, well, we want to do something that's more in-house KYVL, whatever. Right now, these are the versions that we have. So we kind of had a icon for, hey, research is messy and it's a process and so forth. And that's that sort of darker blue one. We of course had the choosing a topic with the light bulb, things like that. So that was fun to think about what would a student who is using these tools, how would they interpret these icons, things like that, which everybody always has to deal with that when you're designing a tool. But again, keeping it simple, because if we create something that is very complex, then it's more to sustain it, right? So this is something that could be sustained by anybody who's getting in there and editing and has edit access with very little trouble, I think. Okay, so now we get to the revamped guide. So here is the URL for that. And once we, decided, okay, we've got some content in here, and we pretty much got it going. We were able to edit the items that we had in, and there were a couple of guide design, let's see, elements. Those of you who use libguides and do web pages and are responsible for those know, you're thinking about doing alt tags. You're thinking about keeping your font consistent. And I know that James Allen, he gave some feedback and he was like, I can't see that font. And I was like, you're right. The default font on those libguides is so small. So what we did was we basically went in and kind of put that default font a little bit higher. So here, let me find the revamped page here, the live page. Okay, so here's our live page, which actually, if you have the link, you can get straight to it. So great if you guys can get in there. I'll go ahead and, well, if somebody can grab that URL, I had that QR code, but if
Got it.
you got it, okay, good. Thank you so much. So again, we did not stray very far from Enid's original sort of flow. There's side navigation. There's step one, step two, step three. One big thing that we did was we broke down there originally the finding and evaluating was together. And once we started kind of getting all that content into the Google Doc, we realized really quickly that we didn't want to get rid of any, we needed that evaluation piece for sure, but it was getting too long. So let's make it its own section. So there were some easy changes like that where we could just kind of adapt it. So what we tried to do was basically incorporate those like heads up kind of things. Here's what you're going to be doing. And also these notes where we would say something like, if the student is using this by themselves, so let's say, or they're sitting in a public library and they're using this tool, basically making sure that we gave them the message like, hey, by the way, your teacher may have told you something about this. You might want to check your assignment instructions, and a note to that effect in each of the sections. And then this sort of meta literacy piece where we're asking them to think about the process, think about what is, let's see if I can blow this up a bit, thinking about what they're going to be doing. And then this was the big piece of trying to make sure that we are focusing on a particular KYVL tool. So when we did the STLP project in a table activity in Lexington, we found that using the Britannica School Middle tool, KYVL database, was useful, and the interface they seem to respond to the interface. They seem to be able to click on things intuitively. And so that tool actually has a ready to research section. So I'm going to log in here with, and this is another issue that I may have to work out with wanting to make sure that we have the right links in here. Okay, so here is the Britannica School Middle version of kind of the research process, and it's got basically these little tools to use for each step of the way. So what we did was link to that, basically say, hey, there's a tool you can use for this. It's in Britannica. And then Enid created a little tutorial using, I think this is IO. I'm sorry, I cannot remember the name of this thing. You'll have to ask her. But I have it written down somewhere. That she created just this like super short, like I think it's I don't even think it's 30 seconds, honestly. It's just like, go here, go here, go here. If you're starting on the KYVL page and you don't know where to go, here's where you go to get to this tool. So we kind of just focused in on that one tool right there, instead of trying to say, okay, here's 50 different databases, right? I'm already thinking about how we might have some sort of statement like, well, there are other tools that you might use. Here are some ideas, that kind of thing. But at this point, we again are trying to keep it focused. We did put in decided to put in kind of an interactive piece, and I was using LibWizard Lite. So basic and also I only have LibWizard Lite at my institution, so I don't have the full LibWizard. So without turning it into a LibWizard item, what can you do in LibGuides to sort of make it more interactive? And I have been using with some of the tutorials that I do, or some of those pages, LibGuides that I do that are more like tutorials. I've been using the poll feature. So it doesn't tell them the answer, but it does give them a kind of a heads up on, hey, what I might consider, or some thoughts, and then they can see how other people have answered if they click on it. and they submit it, they'll see that some other people have the same issue, let's say.
Esther,
Yeah.
Carla said it's IORAD
Yes. Thank you,
in the
Carla.
it's in the chat.
Oh, thank you for saving me. I should have written it down in my notes. I didn't. And so the last piece on each of these sections would be like, what's your next step kind of thing. So there's some navigation of go to the next step. And then we have a how can we make this page better? So if you wanted to click on that, how can we make this page better and give us some ideas, we would absolutely love it. And that will go to KYVL's LibWizard forms. I think it's a form that Enid has created, and it's 2 questions. Woohoo! 2 questions only. All right, so each of these sections has something like to that effect of like a little, here you are, and here's a note, and things like when we were in this section, we said things like, you know what, we don't need more than, I was like, we don't need more than 2 questions, but occasionally we do have 3. But I said we definitely don't need more than 3 questions for this age group, right? And we don't even know if they're going to look at it at all, honestly. But at least, let's say you were using this for an instruction tool, which you could say, well, let's talk about these things, and then there'd be a little more guidance, I guess. So in this case, for the finding and choosing a topic, we had 2 KYVL tools that we really liked. For this particular step, and all through the little tool, we basically stay with Britannica School Middle because we did like the interface, but we did throw in the Explorer for middle school simply because it does have this sort of topic sort of feature, and we used it when we went to that event. And the students had fun kind of clicking on these little tiles and jumping in and choosing and looking and exploring on a topic of their interest. So we did decide that maybe we would incorporate another tool there that would be appropriate for them. So there is a little short IRAD video again, because we found that Explora didn't have, the vendor did not have a good tool for that for Explora. It just didn't work. So Enid created a short video for that. We do have another poll question. And then this piece right here, your check your work piece, Stephanie Keeling kind of introduced this section. She said they need to go back and they need to be think about, did you find when you did this topic exploration in this tool, did you find stuff that was maybe you only found like 1 article? Well, maybe you need to think about that your topic's too narrow. So notice that I'm using the word small and the word big instead of broad and narrow. So there you go. There's the language issue. And then we always incorporated in each section a having trouble doing this, talk to a librarian at your school or public library, and then sort of linked to Britannica has some basically like some PDF style worksheets that they can kind of print out and sort of do by hand versus being inside the tool. And so we kind of just linked that there to reinforce that database. And again, they have a go to the next step, go back a step. So kind of taking them through each step. And then the original tool did have a sort of production piece, like you're going to produce some sort of paper project, whatever. And so we did keep that piece, even though I felt like that it really was kind of almost outside the tool, right? But as far as like what we could actually do with the tool. But what we did was kind of sort of pointed them to things like a little bit of writing. So the original how to do research tool had a lot about, writing style, things like that. And that might come in to more play as we get into the older age groups or whatnot, the age ranges. But for this middle grades, we decided to just focus on things like communicating your ideas with your sentences and paragraphs, for instance. And then Britannica School Middle did have a section on creating a presentation, and it does kind of give them guidelines on, if they're doing a speech or they're doing a multimedia or they're doing this, because there's so many different options for that. And so just focusing on, say, doing a paper really didn't quite hit it. Our poll question was, hey, which of these is your favorite for creating presentations? Because we just kind of wanted to give them a little heads up. And then that gives information to Enid that she can collect and say, well, when I go somewhere, it looks like these folks are using Google Slides a lot. So I might talk about Google Slides or use Google Slides or do something. So it's a little piece for her. Checking their work. This is back to making sure that they've cited things. And getting some help, and then their next step. And then, of course, we did add in the reflection piece for the meta literacy. So asking themselves which step was most challenging, how does it help you express what you want to do? And then Britannica School Middle does have like this little wrap up tool. So we just kind of link to that tool if they want to use that. And then asking them how they felt about it, checking their work. Have you completed all the steps? Do you need to go back to another step? And so forth. So they could go back to step one, or they could just go back up and choose one of the steps on the side. And then, of course, we linked to the CASEL standards. And so there it is. And there's an opportunity to give feedback on each of those pages. So we would love to get feedback from you guys. All right, let me get back to my PowerPoint here. Okay. So last thing is any questions? And also, if you are interested in joining the project, there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. There's a little interest form there. And I'm also going to grab the link. Well, if somebody can grab the link and stick it in chat for me, you can get to that as well. Sorry, I didn't put it onto the presentation there. Couple things that I may be a little ambitious. Okay. I'm not going to be a co-chair anymore. Caroline is going to be we have co-chairs in the InfoLit. Sorry, I'm waving my arm at my light here. We have co-chairs in the InfoLit work group, and we usually try to pull in a K through 12 person and a academic librarian or post-secondary person. And so I'm going to step down. I'm still going to be in the work group working on this project here. So there's a couple of things you could do. You could jump in if you wanted to help edit and revise the middle grades version that I just showed you. There's probably guaranteed there's places where like I have a blind spot, right? I just thought, well, maybe if maybe we need to have sort of an intro thing that says, hey, this is what this is. It's like just a little short video or something like that that's more visual. I like visuals, but they're hard to maintain. So, but editing, revising that middle grades version that I just showed you, drafting content for an elementary version. So there's going to be a primary elementary, kind of a second through fourth kind of age range, I guess, that will take the middle grades one, the structure of it, and then interpret it for the younger age group. And the same thing, there'll be a drafting for a secondary age group. So going back to high school. So how do you take what we did and interpret it for high school? What do you add? How do you change the language? What do you do for that? So that was the idea anyway, of creating that middle one and then being able to sort of shift down to the younger age range and shift up to the older age range, because there's lots of stuff out there for post-secondary, specifically, very specific to post-secondary. So trying to get those other K through 12 ranges in there first. Other folks could just help us maintain and check content. You could say like, well, I'll go in and check your links and make sure your videos are okay, and make suggestions about some things or whatever. And you wouldn't necessarily have to do the design aspect of it. So that's an option on that form. And then if you'd like to try it out with a class, or try it out, like if you're doing an education class and you want to try it out with your ed class, or if you're actually, working with some middle grades students, trying it out with them, saying, what do you think? There is a possibility that we would possibly put it in LibWizard, but at this point, it is a little reluctant to do that, just because trying to maintain all those pieces might get a little overwhelming. So at this point, I think this is manageable with the different versions that we would have, being a little more straightforward. So, all right, so I'm going to take any questions. There's my contact information. If you want to email me, you want to chat, you want to, throw ideas around, I love it. I'm an idea person. And if you see any major, like, oh my gosh, don't do that, please let us know. We will not take offense, because it's, it's sort of grassroots if you think about it, in a way. So trying to get something out there. So all right, let me go back over to here, stop sharing, and see if I can see chat again. Any questions that we've got?
There's not anything in the chat right now, but people can unmute themselves or put stuff in the chat. Either way, we'll get the questions to you. Got about 3 more minutes.
Okay. And if Carla's on, did you want to add anything, Carla, that I might have missed?
You covered everything very well.
Okay.
Thank you, Esther. Esther did a great job leading us on this project.
I don't think any of us are web designers, right, Carla? I don't think we have anybody who's like a professional person, other than Enid. Enid, yes, but
pretty good. But
oh, okay. So Kate says that. Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing a little bit of potential with maybe having some issues with those links. I told try to get Enid to see if the database could get us to the page we want to get to, like within that data. At this point, we're kind of going to like a dashboard kind of effect, and then the student has to kind of click on things. So it would be nice if they could get straight into the tool that we want them to get into at any particular time. Yeah. So yeah, for the high school, it'll be ramped up a little bit more. The high school, oh, I can tell you the databases. Carla, if you remember too, we used what did we use Tumble books for K through second, I believe. For activities. We used, what did we use for high school? I can't remember. Oh, opposing viewpoints. We used opposing viewpoints. Yep. So we'll probably do that one for the high school version. Mhm.
All right, well, we're at 2:45. So if nobody has any further questions, we'll take a 15-minute break and come back at 3 o'clock. See you then. Thank you, Enid. I almost called you Enid because you talked about Enid. I was thinking of Enid. Thank you, Esther, and thank you, Carla.